The breaking news bulletins from Paris on that sweltering August night in 1997 didn't just signal the end of a life. They signaled the collapse of a carefully constructed royal illusion. For decades, the world has operated under a silent collective agreement that the story of Diana, Princess of Wales, was a closed book, a finished tragedy locked away in the vaults of British history. But now, the silence has been shattered by a voice from the very heart of the Spencer bloodline. Diana's niece, Laura Fellows, has stepped out of the shadows with a revelation so explosive, so raw, and so deeply personal that it threatens to dismantle the polished narrative the palace has spent 27 years protecting. This is not the sanitized version of the People's Princess we see in documentaries. This is a truth bomb that exposes the visceral heartbreak, the muddled official reports, and the chilling behind-the-scenes drama that the firm desperately tried to bury. Forget the fairy tale glitz and the soft focus memories. We are entering the real world of the Spencers, where loyalty is a weapon, and the truth is often the first casualty of the crown. For years, the public gaze was fixed on Diana and her older sister, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, the fiery protector. But hidden in the periphery was a figure standing quietly in the shadows, Lady Jane Fellows. As the middle Spencer, Sister Jane was the enigma, the one who remained fiercely private, while her sister's fame reached atmospheric heights. She was the hidden Spencer, a woman who once declined every major interview and avoided every camera, even as she occupied a position of extraordinary tension, married to Lord Robert Fellows, the Queen's own private secretary. Jane was caught in the impossible middle of bridge between the rebellious Spencer spirit and the rigid, unyielding requirements of the royal institution. But that quiet role changed in a heartbeat when she traveled to Paris with Prince Charles to bring her sister's body home. In that moment of bone-deep grief, Jane stepped forward with a dignity that masked a simmering family fury. She delivered the reading at the funeral, a moment of profound grace that signaled to the world that the Spencers were not just background characters, they were the architects of Diana's reality. Today, Jane's influence is more potent than ever as she becomes the silent anchor for William and Harry, the only one who can navigate the jagged rift between the brothers, because she knows exactly what it costs to live under the weight of royal expectations. The night Diana died was not just a night of sorrow for the Spencer family. It was a night of unadulterated anger. Laura Fellows, Jane's daughter, remembers the phone ringing in the dead of night, a sound that sliced through the peace of her childhood home like a blade. She remembers the anxious, fractured tone of her mother's voice and the chaotic, contradictory updates flickering across the television screen. One report claimed Diana was walking and talking. Another whispered that she was already gone. This muddled messaging wasn't just a byproduct of a fast-moving news cycle. To the Spencers, it felt like a deliberate fog. Laura watched as her mother and Aunt Sarah were thrust into a storm of official confusion, where the palace and the authorities seemed unable or unwilling to provide a clear account of what had transpired in that Paris tunnel. That night forged a resolve in Laura that has lasted a lifetime. She felt let down by the chaos, and she saw firsthand how her beloved aunt, a woman who had given her soul to the world, was reduced to a tragic headline before her family could even say goodbye. The accusations of a royal cover-up have never truly faded. They have only evolved. While official inquests pointed to a combination of driver error and the relentless harassment of the paparazzi, the Spencer family's quiet-pointed insistence on a thorough investigation in 2007 suggested they were looking for something deeper. Critics have long argued that critical details were obscured to protect the reputations of the powerful. Part of this suspicion stems from the immediate aftermath, the way the official channels seemed to clash, and the way Diana's own words from the secret tapes recorded for Andrew Morton began to echo with a haunting new significance. She had spoken of feeling unprotected, of being treated as a problem to be managed, rather than a human being in pain. When the jury eventually ruled the death as unlawful killing due to the negligence of the driver and the photographers, many still felt that the investigation had carefully navigated around the underlying factors that made Diana so vulnerable in the first place. The Spencer family's silence since then has often been interpreted as a tactical retreat, a way to protect the boys while keeping their own truths locked behind the gates of Althorpe. Althorpe itself, the ancestral seat of the Spencer family, has become a battlefield for memory and legacy. Beneath its grand limestone walls, a feud has simmered between Diana's siblings Sarah Jane and Charles IX Earl Spencer. The estate is more than just a home. It is Diana's final resting place, and the disagreements over how to honor her memory have frequently set tongues wagging. While Charles has been the public face of Althorpe, often accused of prioritizing modernization and media engagement to keep the estate profitable, his sisters have preferred a more reserved approach. Sarah, who remains deeply involved in Diana's charitable work, and Jane, who believes that too much publicity cheapens the sanctity of their sister's life, have often clashed with their brother's more outward-facing strategies. The tension isn't just about tourism or tickets. It's about who owns the narrative of the people's princess. Sarah and Jane have watched with growing concern as the rift between William and Harry has deepened, fearing that Althorpe could become another staging ground for a war that Diana would have hated. They want the estate to be a sanctuary of peace, but in a family defined by such strong competing personalities, peace is often a fragile, temporary arrangement. Why has Laura Fellows chosen this specific moment to break her silence? For decades, she was the lesser-known niece, the one who supported her cousins quietly and kept her heartbreak sealed away from the reach of the tabloids. But as the world revisits the final hours of Diana's life with renewed intensity, Laura has realized that her silence may be doing more harm than good. She watched as the media frenzy of 1997 nearly destroyed her family, and she feared that any word from her would only add fuel to the fire. But time has changed her perspective. With William and Harry now grown and forging their own paths, Laura senses that the official narrative is missing the human element, the perspective of a niece who saw the raw, unedited side of a woman who was both a global icon and a beloved aunt. She is speaking now not to tarnish the crown, but to honor Diana's humanity. She wants the world to understand the emotional energy it took for the Spencers to let the official story go unchallenged for so long. She wants to bridge the gap between the sensationalized rumors and the quiet reality of their loss. The most chilling development in this saga is the alleged unsealing of Diana's private diary entries. These are not the polished, strategic notes of a public figure. They are the scribbled anxieties of an overwhelmed young woman wrestling with a world that felt both glamorous and suffocating. Insiders claim these journals reveal the true toll that her role in the firm took on her mental well-being. She wrote of her intense loneliness, the feeling of being hunted even within the palace walls, and her fierce, desperate love for her sons. One entry reportedly describes the joy of taking William and Harry on private visits to see AIDS patients, a move she hoped would teach them the power of kindness far beyond the gilded cages of royalty. But the diaries also capture her anger, her sense of betrayal by those she believed were friends, and her frustration with the unbending, archaic rules of palace life. To read these pages is to see a woman who was fundamentally misunderstood by the institution she married into a woman who refused to let her soul be crushed by protocol. The rift between William and Harry looms over everything, a dark cloud that even the Spencer aunts are struggling to dissipate. While Lady Sarah and Lady Jane have been a stabilizing force for both nephews, the shared devotion to their mother has not been enough to heal the growing gulf. William, ever the protector of the institution he will one day lead, and Harry, who has prioritized his own family's freedom and psychological well-being, represent the two conflicting sides of Diana's own legacy. One chose the path of duty, the other chose the path of change. Recent events, such as their joint attendance at Lord Robert Fellowes' funeral, have offered a glimmer of hope that personal loyalties might eventually bridge the divide. But the strain is deep fueled by public comments, a move across the Atlantic, and the fundamental differences in how each brother views his role in the modern world. Sarah and Jane remain in the background, urging peace and unity, serving as a reminder that before they were princes, they were boys who lost their mother, and that the Spencer bond is the only thing that remains untouched by the politics of the throne. Rumors of missing letters and diary entries continue to swirl, fueling the belief that Diana's deepest fears were written down, but never shared. Her sisters have hinted that she confided in them frequently, expressing her concerns in writing when she felt ignored by official channels. They remember the nights she spent documenting the pressures of the paparazzi and the coldness of the palace machine. Much of this material was allegedly locked away at Althorp following the 1997 tragedy, a move intended to preserve Diana's privacy in a world that refused to give it to her. But the question remains, what was in those notes? Was there an urgent cry for help, or a roadmap for her sons that the world has yet to see? The mystery of these missing pages keeps the world captivated. A haunting reminder that Diana's story is not just a historical event, but a living, breathing mystery that continues to evolve with every new revelation. The fear of royal retaliation is a very real undercurrent for the Spencers. The monarchy has a long and storied history of protecting its image at all costs, and any fresh disclosure about Diana's final days is met with an unspoken unease. Spencer family members understand the delicate line they must tread. They want to protect Diana's memory, but they also know that stepping too far out of line could lead to closed doors and a loss of access to the very institution their nephews represent. Silence, for many in the royal orbit, equals survival. Even the suggestion of unsealed diaries or raw confessions is met with stern, unofficial warnings about the importance of privacy. Critics argue that this firm relies on its vast network to maintain order, often influencing press coverage and quietly discouraging family members from speaking their truth. For Laura Fellows, the niece who has finally chosen to speak the potential for private pressure is a constant shadow, a reminder that in the realm of the royals, loyalty is the only currency that matters. As Laura Fellows prepares for the next chapter of her public life, the world is watching with bated breath. Will her insights finally bring clarity to the chaos of 1997? Or will she be met with the same silencing tactics that have kept the Spencer family in the shadows for decades? Her decision to step forward is a bold rejection of the sensationalism that has defined Diana's legacy for too long. She is tired of the half-truths and the tabloid fluff. She wants the world to see the aunt who was a person, not a headline. Her journey is a testament to the enduring power of Diana's spirit, a spirit that refuses to be forgotten or distorted. In the end, Laura's voice is not one of controversy, but of love, a love for a woman who changed the world, and for a family that is still trying to find its way home after the storm. The hidden Spencer has emerged, and in doing so, she may just be the one to rewrite the final chapter of the most famous story in the world. The legacy of Diana is not just found in the statues or the charities. It is found in the blood of the Spencers, a bloodline that has always been more comfortable with the raw truth than with the polished lie. As William and Harry continue their separate journeys, the influence of their aunts Sarah and Jane remains the only thread connecting them to a past that was once filled with warmth and laughter. The Spencers have always known that the crown is a heavy burden, but they also know that the truth is the only thing that can set you free from it. Whether it is through the diaries, the letters, or the long overdue confessions of a niece who has had enough, the story of Diana is finally being returned to those who loved her most. And as the palace walls continue to stand tall and silent, the voices from Althorp are growing louder, a reminder that the people's princess was first and foremost a Spencer, and the Spencers never ever stay quiet for long. The tension between the traditional silence of the monarchy and the emotional transparency of the Spencers has reached a breaking point. We are now seeing the Spencer side of the story take precedence over the official side. Laura Fellows represents a new generation of the family that is unwilling to abide by the archaic rules of the firm. She sees her cousin struggling, She sees her aunt's memory being commodified, and she has decided that the only way to honor Diana is to be as brave as Diana was. This is the real royal secret, that the family who stayed quiet for 26 years is no longer afraid of the consequences. They are ready to reclaim their aunt, their sister, and their truth. And as the world listens, the course of royal history is being shifted by the gentle but unyielding presence of a niece who has decided that the time for silence is over. In the final analysis, the story of Diana, Princess of Wales, is a story about the fight for humanity in a world of protocol. It is about the woman who wanted to be a mother and a wife first, and a princess last. The revelations from Laura Fellows and the emerging presence of Lady Jane Fellows remind us that behind every newsreel and every headline, there was a family grieving in private while the world gawked in public. The anger, the heartbreak, and the accusations of cover-ups are all parts of a larger puzzle that we are only just beginning to assemble. As we look at the unsealed diaries and the missing notes, we see a woman who was trying to find her voice in a place that wanted her to be silent. And now, through her niece, that voice is finally being heard again, loud, clear, and absolutely explosive. There is no going back now. The truth has been dropped, and the world will never look at the House of Windsor the same way again. The familiar Spencer legacy is alive, and it is finally speaking its truth to power.